All right, so Anthony Joshua has finally addressed the Andy Ruiz rematch. This is about camp. Please hit the subscribe button. You'll find it in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Over the last couple of weeks, I've seen Andy Ruiz being very, very vocal about this Anthony Joshua rematch. I've heard him talk about where he thinks the fight should be, where it shouldn't be. I've heard him talk about who he thinks is the A side, who's the B side. I've heard him talk about how much of a purse he thinks he deserves. And in that period, I haven't seen or heard anything from Anthony Joshua with regards to this fight. He's been active on social media, but all of his posts have been about anything and everything apart from this particular fight. That changed today. He spoke to Sky Sports, he spoke to Adam Smith, and he discussed a couple of things that I found quite interesting. The first thing that I found quite interesting was the location of the fight. So it was kind of weird because Anthony Joshua basically said Andy Ruiz has been talking quite a bit. He thinks he calls the shots, but he doesn't call any shots. I want the fight to be in the UK. But in the next breath, he goes, I think Andy Ruiz deserves the respect as the champion. And if he wants the fight to be in a neutral location, then we'll go and fight in a neutral location. The reason why I found that strange is because he kind of contradicted himself. On one hand, he's saying that Andy Ruiz has no power and he doesn't call any shots. And then on the other hand, he's saying, well, Andy Ruiz deserves a say because he's the champion, so we'll fight in a neutral venue. Which is it? Do you know what I mean? Like, which is it out of those two? And this interview actually ties into something that I was going to say last week. So I actually made a video, or I recorded the audio for a video about Andy Ruiz's appearance on Joe Rogan. I just didn't ever get around to posting it. And the whole premise of that video that the audio that I recorded was basically me saying that Andy Ruiz has given away the fact that the fight with Anthony Joshua isn't going to be in the UK and it isn't going to be in the States and it's going to be in a neutral country. Go and watch that interview yourselves. It's about an hour long. And I'm just forewarning you, it's fucking boring because Andy Ruiz Jr. is one dry fucking personality, man. Honestly, like Joe Rogan was setting him up with so many questions where Andy Ruiz could just really express himself and let us know how he feels. I remember this one point in the podcast where Joe Rogan asked him about how it felt when the referee waved his hands and declared Ruiz the winner by not letting AJ continue. And then there was a picture on the screen of Andy Ruiz jumping for joy with both his arms in the air and both his feet off the canvas. And all Andy Ruiz said, oh man, I was so happy, it's crazy. And I thought to myself, fucking hell, man, this is a lifetime's work for you. And the only words you can muster are, oh man, I was so happy, it's crazy. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, he even said in that interview that he wants to be a promoter. That's his next step in his career after he finishes fighting. And if he wants to be a promoter, then fuck me, he's got to step up his game when it comes to having interviews and talking, because that's the main fucking job of a promoter in the media. Anyway, I'm going way off topic, but yeah. In that interview, basically, Andy Ruiz discussed this rematch at length. And if you kind of piece up different portions of that interview, you'll come to the same conclusion that I did. Because in one part of the interview, he said that he's not going to fight in the UK. It's not happening in the UK. In another part of the interview, when they spoke about where the fight's going to be, he said, I can't tell you where it's going to be. But then he said, I wanted it to be in MSG, but it's not happening there. Then Rogan said, what about here in LA? He said, no, it's not happening here. He said, it's not happening in Vegas. And then later on in the podcast, he said that he started talking about his training camp. And he said he's going to go to the mountains and then he's going to come back down to kind of sea level, I suppose you'd call it. Train for a month, reacclimatize. And then he said he's going to fly out. And Joe Rogan obviously was told where the fight's going to be, but obviously he didn't let it slip. And yeah, if you watch that interview, you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. He basically gave away the fact that the fight isn't happening in the UK or the States, it's happening in a neutral location. So that's what I'd have my money on. I don't know which country, perhaps maybe kind of Saudi Arabia, Dubai, one of them kind of places, because I do know so obviously Khan's had a fight in Saudi Arabia and he's having another one later this year. I know the UFC are going back to Abu Dhabi in September, so maybe that could be a practice run. Like once that happens, they'll announce the rematch in Abu Dhabi. that's what I've got my money on personally. But yeah, I suppose the next point that I wanted to make is why is it happening in a neutral location? Ever since this rematch got announced, Eddie Hearn has been banging on about how Andy Ruiz will effectively do as he's told, about how they've got this rematch clause in the contract and they know exactly what's required of them with this rematch clause, and it's just down to us to pick a location. And then I've noticed over the last kind of week or two, he's kind of eased off on that standpoint, I suppose is the best way of saying it. And he started to be a bit more open to the idea of the fight happening in different locations. And then most recently I saw, I think, when was it? It might have been during the next gen card with when Fowler fought Rose, or it might have been prior to that. And Eddie Hearn basically said something along the lines of, we need to get Ruiz's team to agree to the location, or something like that. I don't know exactly what it was. I've seen so many of his interviews over the last couple of weeks. I don't even know which one it was, which one of the interviews it was. I'm pretty sure it's September 7th is when the UFC is in Abu Dhabi. And I've got my money on an announcement happening after that event. I don't know why, I've just got this feeling. But I'll probably be wrong. What do you guys think about this venue? What do you guys think about this whole situation? From it being a case of Ruiz is going to do as he's told, to now we need to kind of discuss. It's almost like they have to discuss it and get an agreement from Ruiz's team. And I find that quite strange. And I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know how these clauses in these contracts work. But if that clause is watertight, then surely they would have just made a decision by now and picked a venue. And I don't know. I just don't. It's quite a strange situation, because clearly Eddie Hearn and his team don't have as much power as they were letting on, and possibly Ruiz, in all the kind of like I said, I've said this previously, he's not the sharpest tool in the box, but perhaps the people around him are, and it might be a loophole in the contract, or the contract might just be open to interpretation, or the clause might be open to interpretation, and they've taken advantage of that, and fair play to them. It's their job to do the best for their client, and that's what they're doing effectively, if they've managed to agree for the fight to happen in a neutral venue. But yeah, we'll wait for that announcement. Let me know what you guys think. Don't be scared to hit that like button. If you've enjoyed this video, share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. I'll catch you guys on the next one.